Hello everyone. My name is Keiko ASAKURA and I am an Associate Professor of Toho University, School of Medicine in Tokyo, Japan. Thank you all for joining this symposium today. The title of my presentation is School Lunches in Japan, Their Contribution to Healthier Nutrient Intake. This presentation includes 4 topics. First, I will introduce history of Japanese school lunches. Then, I will describe the current system of Japanese school lunches. After that, I will discuss the contribution of school lunches to overall nutrient intakes among school children. Finally, I will show the summary and the future direction. The first topic is the history of Japanese school lunches. School lunches in Japan have a history of more than 100 years. It was firstly provided in 1889 at a private elementary school in Yamagata Prefecture as relief work for children in poverty by Buddhists. Then, the Ministry of Education began the financial subsidization of school lunches in 1932. After World War II, namely after 1945, the nutritional status of school children, also adults, was severely downgraded. To improve this condition, the nationwide school lunch program was restarted in 1947 with relief supplies from the licensed agencies for relief in Asia, LALA, UNICEF, and others. Then, after School Lunch Program Act was promulgated and enforced in 1954, Japanese school lunch program gained lawful authority and was provided nationwide in the current style. Here, I show 4 photos of school lunches. The menu of the first school lunch was rice bowl, grilled fish, and pickled vegetables. After World War II, only skimmed milk and 1 dish was served. As the economic status in Japan became better, the number and quality of dishes offering in school lunches were also improved. Current menus usually include staple food such as rice or bread, main dish, side dish, soup, milk, and fruits. The next topic is the current system of Japanese school lunches. The objective of School Lunch Program was described in the School Lunch Program Act. Basically, Japanese school lunches are counted as a part of education. 7 objectives were shown, such as to maintain and enhance well-being of school children through appropriate nutrient intake, or to provide school children with opportunities to learn appropriate diets, and so on. There are 3 types of school lunches in Japan: complete, supplementary, and milk lunches. You have already seen pictures of complete lunches. As the supplementary lunches, schools provide only a supplementary dish with or without milk and require students to bring their own staple food. As the milk lunches, only milk is handed out by schools. In 2018, the number of schools providing school lunches were 30,092, and the implementation rate was 95.2% of all schools. The complete lunches were provided in 93.5% of all schools. Next, supply methods of school lunches are shown. School lunches are cooked in a school kitchen or in a centralized cookery for some schools. In Japan, as the birth rate declined and the population of children decreased, many public schools terminated cooking in their own kitchen. The areas covered by centralized cookeries is increasing, especially in underpopulated regions. School lunch cooked in the cookery are usually brought to multiple schools. In Japan, cafeterias in primary and junior high schools are very rare. Average fees for school lunches are also shown here. Monthly fee for primary school children was 4,343 Japanese yen, and that for junior high school was 4,941 yen in 1918. Since about 17 lunches are provided in each month, fee for each lunch is approximately 250 to 300 yen. Then, I'd like to introduce school lunch nutrition standards. This standard was set by the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology of Japanese government, and all menus are prepared according to it. Standard values for energy and several nutrients are shown by children's age. This standard was set based on the national survey about children's dietary intake, and I will describe details of the survey later. Further, there is a law named the Basic Law of Food and Nutrition Education in Japan. Shokuiku is a Japanese word meaning food and nutrition education. The law was promulgated in 2005 to clarify how to implement lifelong learning for healthy and sustainable dietary life in Japanese people. School lunches are the main component of food and nutrition education at school, and they are regarded as teaching materials. As mentioned before, lunchtime is not break time in Japan. Rather, it is a part of education. To facilitate shokuiku, namely nutrition education, Nutrition Teacher System was introduced in 2007. In 2020, there were 6,652 nutrition teachers across Japan. They are working as coordinators of food and nutrition education activities. For example, developing school lunch menus as suitable materials for shokuiku, giving short lecture at lunchtime with homeroom teachers, and coordinating shokuiku lessons. The third topic is the contribution of school lunches to overall nutrient intakes among school children. In Japan, data about children's nutrient and food intake had not been sufficient, and it was difficult to establish an evidence-based standard for school lunches. For this reason, a nationwide dietary survey was performed in primary and secondary school children in 2014. I was a team leader of this survey. Based on the results of this survey, the current standard for school lunches was developed. The survey included 3-day diet record, questionnaire survey about dietary habits, and measurement of height and weight. The 3 days for diet record included 2 school days with school lunch and 1 day in weekend without school lunch. As shown in the map, the survey schools were chosen from 12 prefectures. Children in 3rd, 5th, and 8th grade were recruited. In total, 910 children submitted complete 3-day diet records, and their data was analyzed. The participation rate was 76.5%. This table shows distribution of age and sex as well as participants' height and weight. They were regarded as representation of Japanese school children. In this slide, I show prevalence of nutrient intake inadequacy in the boys. The bars show percentage of the boys whose nutrient intake were inadequate. Thus, a higher bar means worse condition. There are 2 graphs. The left graph shows inadequacy about nutrients with DG. Tentative dietary goal for preventing lifestyle-related diseases. Protein, fat, carbohydrate, dietary fiber, salt equivalent, and potassium were included in the graph. Higher bar in the left graph implies higher risk of lifestyle-related diseases such as hypertension or dyslipidemia in the future. The right graph shows inadequacy about nutrients with EAR, estimated average requirement. Protein, vitamins, and minerals were included in the graph. Higher bar in the right graph implies higher risk of nutrient insufficiency and deficiency. The blue bars show inadequacy on a school day, and red bars show that on a non-school day. All blue bars are shorter than red bars of the same nutrient, and this means nutrient intake was more adequate in a school day than a non-school day. Inadequacy of fat, dietary fiber, and salt equivalent was relatively higher than other nutrients even in a school day. Particularly, excess intake of salt was considered as a big problem. The results about girls were shown in this slide. The results were almost the same with the boys. Regarding all nutrients except for salt equivalent, prevalence of inadequacy was higher in non-school days, the red bars. School lunches contributed to better intakes of nutrients both in boys and girls. Salt intake in Japanese school children seems to be too high to satisfy the DZ just by cutting salt intake in lunches. In this slide, I show the similar graphs, but the inadequacy was calculated using estimated habitual intake of nutrients. Habitual intake was estimated by best of our method using all of 3-day dietary intake data. Day-to-day variation of dietary intake was adjusted by this estimation. As the graph shown before, higher bars mean higher proportion of children with inadequate nutrient intake, namely in worse condition. There are 3 bars for one nutrient, and each bar shows inadequacy for 3rd, 5th, and 8th graders. almost all children consumed excess salt, and 30 to 40% of the children consumed excess fat. Regarding dietary fiber, this prevalence of inadequacy means the proportion of children with insufficient dietary fiber intake. Most children consumed appropriate amount of vitamins and minerals, but there are some nutrients which were not sufficiently consumed in 8th grader boys. The results about girls were shown here. The results were similar with the boys. Prevalence of inadequacy was higher for salt equivalent, fat, and dietary fiber. Prevalence of inadequacy, namely insufficient intake, was generally low for vitamins and minerals, but it was relatively high for calcium and iron. I'd like to summarize the survey results. The school children in the survey consumed more protein, vitamins, and minerals on school days with school lunch than non-school days. However, this difference was not so apparent on fat and salt intakes. Intakes of nutrients with DG, namely nutrients which can cause lifestyle-related diseases, were more inadequate than those with EAR. Based on this survey data, the school lunch nutrition standards were revised. In brief, intakes of nutrients in breakfast, dinner, and snacks were subtracted from daily ideal intakes shown in the dietary reference intakes for Japanese to estimate required or permitted intakes in lunch. Ideal intake minus intake in breakfast, dinner, and snacks equal to required or permitted intake in lunch. These values were utilized in the formulation of the school lunch nutrition standards. You can find all of these results in a paper shown here. Lastly, I'd like to summarize the presentation and show the future direction. School lunches in Japan have more than 100 years of history. The current program was legally authorized by School Lunch Program Act in 1954, and the implementation rate of the program was 95.2% in 2018. Beneficial effect of school lunches on nutrient intakes among the school children was apparent in the nationwide dietary survey. The school lunches can contribute to prevention of non-communicable diseases, which is one of the basic goals for national health promotion. Health Japan 21, the second term. In Japan, lunchtime at school is a part of education. Although there are some difficult issues such as salt reduction or increase of dietary fiber intake, combination of school lunch provision and shokuiku can be a solution. Thank you all for listening. It was a pleasure being here today.